So welcome everyone to this stream on authentic assessment. It's great to have you with us at the KIITE conference. I hope you found the keynote speaker really interesting. I certainly did prior to this session. But what we're going to be focused on in this stream is authentic assessment. And the first speaker that we have is Dr. Ella Masami. Ella's a lecturer in neuroscience and she joined KIITE in September 2019. She teaches in the School of Life Sciences, School of Psychology and School of Medicine. She's a fellow of the Higher Education Advanced HE and a fellow in Curriculum Design and Internationalisation at KIITE. In her presentation, she's looking at addressing the use of technology in the design of authentic assessments, an approach that would enhance students' knowledge and transferable skills and should better prepare them for the global competence. So what we're going to do is we're going to have all of our presenters present and then we'll have questions and answers at the end. But as per the other streams, please use the comments box. So Ella, over to you.
Thank you very much, Phil, and thank you, KIITE, for the invitation. So today's talk is about authentic assessments, and we use a case study to look into ways that I managed to move away from essay writing and educate our learners for global competence. This is a joint presentation, and I've invited one of the level 6 students in neuroscience, and we are going to reflect back on one of the modules and assessment in this module at level 5. So authentic assessments are designed not just to measure and assess the knowledge and understanding of learners, but to provide an environment to test their ability of problem solving, introducing them to a unique and real life situation to better actually make them value the knowledge they are gaining in classrooms and appreciate the translational values of the science and knowledge they have been learning. The role of educators, however, is when it comes to design and development of authentic assessments is a bit complicated and challenging compared to traditional assessments, because in this form of assessments, we are not just asking students to recall and echo back what they learn in the classrooms, but we are actually using these realistic scenarios to measure the depth of their knowledge, their skills in terms of critical thinking, and we give them this platform to showcase their skills, including other transferable skills such as teamwork, such as exercising inclusivity, such as ability to overcome obstacles, time management, and many more. So when we are designing these forms of authentic assessments, we are actually observing the student performance and marking them based on our observations. In this case study, we look at neuropharmacology module. This is a level 5 module in neuroscience at the School of Life Sciences. When I joined KIITE in 2019, I became module manager, and little I knew that this module is heavily assessed. It had 4 written formats of assessments, 3 essays, each of them 2,000 words, and 1 journal comprehension written assessment that we all know that would exceed more than 2,000 words. So in summer of 2020, I proposed changes for this assessment. I've introduced an oral science communication format of assessment that was the journal comprehension, where students would read and comprehend a very recent peer-reviewed paper in the field of neuropharmacology. They work in a group, they present their assessment in an oral format, and they record the element of technology and exercising. Their digital literacy was included, so they would record their voices, and the promise was that they would receive personalized feedback afterwards. I kept one of the written format of essays and assessments for the final and the end of semester 2, at the end of the year exam as well. I've invited Samira, one of our level 6 students. She kindly agreed to record this because she has an exam today. So I hope you all appreciate the contribution of this student. So we are hearing students' perspectives, and I ask questions and she will answer my questions. So welcome, Samira, to this talk. Could you please briefly tell us about your experience in a neuropharmacology module, and particularly focus on the assessment, the journal comprehension assessment?
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Ella. So to break down the assessment, we did a journal comprehension, but presented it as a group instead of traditionally presenting it on a simple document or writing an essay. Instead, it was a lot more engaging. We were first put into groups and then given a section of the journal article to then dissect and present. We were assessed on how well we understood our section, what the section portrayed, how it supported previous findings and studies. And I think the most important part of the assessment was how we were especially assessed on our critical thinking skills, as it is something that's extremely important in the research field. So to further elaborate on the journal comprehension test, the article that my group was appointed was Characterization of Opioidergic Mechanisms Related to the Anti-Migraine Effects of Vagus Nerve Stimulation. So just in the title, we can see that there's a lot of components to this article. And up until that point, I hadn't actually read an article all the way through, so it was a great opportunity to fully dissect each section and understand what each section was trying to portray. And it was immensely beneficial that I was in a group, which meant that if I didn't quite understand something, then we could discuss it as a group and gain different perspectives on it. I think this way of learning is a lot more practical than individual work, because realistically in the future, if I encountered obstacles, I would ask my peers or colleagues to help me understand. And that's what comprehension is. It's the ability to understand something.
Thank you very much. Could you please address the skills you gain and things you have learned via getting engaged with this or being engaged with this type of assessment?
The digital literacy skills we were able to develop. With the rise of COVID and the popularity of remote learning and remote working, it's an incredibly useful skill to be able to communicate scientific knowledge through digital platforms. This makes science more accessible to the wider community, but also to scientists across the world. Recording the audio visuals did seem daunting at first, but with a bit of practice with my group, we were able to overcome that obstacle. Digital literacy skills are highly valued by employers, and employers look for people who are competent with technology. And this is something the journal comprehension test has given us. The journal comprehension test gave us the ability to break down an intimidating academic paper so it's easier to understand, and also help develop our critical thinking skills. This skill is highly beneficial in the research field because, as I can imagine, scientists have complex findings and studies which then need to be portrayed in a simple manner to the general public or to other scientists around the world. Another skill that we were able to develop is being able to identify gaps in knowledge and find inconsistencies. This gives us a way of building a foundation for further research. Finally, the test gave me the opportunity to discuss new and emerging research with my peers, and I know this is basic communication, but it's an absolutely fundamental transferable skill. To improve the assessment, I think individual tutorials before the presentation would be useful, as it would help mitigate any confusion some people may have and make sure that everyone in the group is engaging.
Thank you, Samira. Could you please tell us about your expectations? What did you expect before you joined and enroll on this module, and what happened when you took on this module?
I actually wasn't familiar with the format of the assessment. I had spoken to older students and they had me assuming there was mostly written assignments, so I was surprised when we had a journal comprehension test where we had to present it as a group. But overall, the experience was good and I learned a lot from others and I developed key skills that I'll need in the future. I did struggle with the end of year exam because I had never written an essay style answer for an exam before, and with COVID as well, it was really hard to focus, especially in the exam. So I felt very unprepared, but I think I've learned from my mistakes now. And overall, the current format of the assessment is good.
Thank you again. Could you please elaborate a little bit about the feedback you received? Was it useful or otherwise, and in what ways?
Thankfully, we were given personal feedback and received constructive criticism. I can imagine it took Ella a long time to mark, but doing so has helped us see our errors so we can improve next time. My group in particular, we had a few issues such as not explaining abbreviations thoroughly. There were some issues in the structure as well, where the conclusion and abstract were together and not separate. And although they seem minor, when relaying scientific information, it's important to do so accurately. So overall, I think that the personal feedback has helped us all grow individually.
Thank you very much. Finally, how do you think we can improve, I as module manager and we as a team, improve this module and the assessment in this module?
A skill that needs developing more involves statistics and maths. We need more knowledge on statistics, I think, because when I was analysing the results section, a lot of the findings were explained or supported by statistics, and I did struggle a lot trying to decipher what everything meant. And we did discuss it as a group, but the thing was everyone found it difficult to understand. So if we were given a tutorial maybe on how to analyze and decipher statistics, or even a little bit about different statistical tests and what the numbers mean, would be helpful to prepare us for global competence and also gives us more knowledge and more skills.
Thank you so very much. So the final slides, we go back and reflect on changes we applied in this module's assessments and how it helped students with not just critical thinking and critical appraisal, but the depth of knowledge and understanding of up-to-date topics, bringing research and researchers closer into the classrooms so they learn more about their topics, and the personalized feedback that helped them further shape and fill the gaps, or at least understand which are the areas they need to work on. With this brief, I'd like to conclude, and I appreciate and thank you for listening. Any question is welcome. I can also forward your questions to Samira, and we can record and give back to KIITE team to put it on their website. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you very much, Ella. We will take some questions at the end. And well done for finishing not much over 15 minutes, given all the technical problems. So it's really great the amount of content that you had to get through was quite substantial. So what I would ask presenting colleagues to do is, you've been having a look through hopefully the chat, and your presentations have created quite a lot of comments, questions. So if anyone has a question that they'd like to ask, please raise your hand. Could I invite the presenters to respond to some of the comments that might have been made on your talk in the chat bar, please? So who'd like to go first? Thank you for that, Kate. Ella, I noticed there was a few comments about.
I saw Terry's comment about the teamwork element, and exactly as we discussed during presentations, the students were able to employ various learning theories. And when it comes to teamwork and working together, we are touching on the professional standards framework of KIITE, how students learn. So it seems like when they are all together, they can ask questions from one another. So as they employ social constructivism, they actually learn better. So that was the main, at least for me, take-home message from this case study and what the student highlighted. And of course, as they are in a team, they complement each other. So as I was marking them, some were very good in critical appraisal. So they would learn how actually my peers approached it, and what Ella provided feedback to her or him, I should be more like this individual. Or someone has a very critical vision, so they can see details and depth of that knowledge and extract that knowledge out. Some were good in analyzing or interpreting the data, and some were good in the solid basic science or background, so they could build a nice foundation. So actually it's all to learn about, and the way that we could employ various learning theories. I moved away from behaviorism learning theory, penalizing them and so on. So they were actually employed most of the theories that are actually beneficial to them. And as I said, we could map a lot of professional standards framework to this type of assessment, from, let's say, design A1 to the assessment A3 and K4 and beyond that. So that we have actually included the V4, which is connecting what they learn with the wider implications, that is the employability of the learners. And of course, V1 and V2 was included, so we thought about inclusivity, and the students who were suffering from anxiety, they were given an opportunity to work as a team but present individually, so that they could have that element that reduces the anxiety in them. Those who had stammer or had difficulty in pronunciations or needed some time, which we usually assign to them in the normal exam settings at 20% legal room of time, they also given that flexibility. So we actually employed that inclusivity element in the design and delivery of the assessment as well. So I let other peers also comment on their presentations.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Ella.
Colleagues, students, I should say.
And I guess there's a difference, isn't there, between, I've taught international undergraduate students, and sometimes because of culture or other things, they can be a bit reticent to engage. But of course, we're talking about professional people out in business.
Yeah, they're often having to communicate their decision to their consultants, to the rest of the team. So it seems that oral presentation plays to their strengths in terms of assessment, rather than writing an assignment about it.
Thank you, Jane. And can I come back to you, Ella, because you've been very patiently sitting there with your hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, not anything. You've muted now.
I wanted to comment on Ian and Sue. So Ian highlighted the ECs. So at least I can give you my experience. In our assessment, they get this 5 days extension, and they can submit a bit later. So I had a case that they had a valid EC, so they could, because they are actually, recording their own 10 minutes, although it's a coherent set of an hour and so recordings, but they have this option to actually submit their slides a bit later. But that element of teamwork, understanding, flexibility, and valuing and appreciating diversity and inclusivity that we were talking about, that the students could actually support one another, and even a majority of the students submitted their work on time, they could actually help out to put everything together, wait for their peers to actually add their slots in and submit again or prompt me again that this is in a KLE. And it was very inclusive because everyone could access all presentations. So it was like a pool of knowledge. To address Sue's about the language barriers, of course, I had students who had difficulties in pronunciations. That was clear that English was not their first language, but they exercised it. So they practiced it, and during the tutorials, they got instructions how to improve it. And I gave my own examples that if I'm coming to your lectures, because I'm not the native speaker, I have to exercise it. I have to practice it. So you do the same. So they could relate to their peers. They could relate to their mentor. And that was just the start. And I said we had the students. It was not just a language barrier, but could be a stammer, could be other, disabilities that would stop them from, students who have ADHD, it stops them from having a coherent conversations, or they have odd pauses in between their talks. So I would understand. So as you mark things, as well as we are considering these elements as we mark essays in a written assessment, it was the same in the oral presentations as well. So they included at the bottom of their slides that this presentation is submitted by students with dyslexia. So as I was watching them and marking them, I would include that as well. I hope I covered these Ian's and Sue's comments and questions. Thank you again.
Super. So we've come to the end of our time together. So I just wanted to make a quick comment. I sort of joined KIITE in 2019, at the end of 2019, to look after the new Senior Leader Apprenticeship MBA. And authentic assessment is absolutely vital and at the heart when you're teaching senior leaders who've been in industry for quite a number of years, whether that's the NHS, whether that's charities, whether it's private practice. And I love reading or listening to students' assignments, because all of their assignments are based in their workplace and that side of things. So this idea of authentic assessment really strikes a resonant chord. But I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. So first of all, thank you if you've come along and listened to the presentation. I'm sure you've found these presentations provocative in terms of thinking and reflecting on your own practice, and also, innovative and inspirational. And again, thank you to everyone who's presented today. It is a bit unusual doing it on Teams, but you've all done very well. You've overcome the technical barriers, and thank you for keeping to time as well and giving us an insight into your projects and activities on authentic assessment. So thank you, everyone, and I'll release you now back into the main conference. Thank you.